Hello there, this is the Digital Lost. I'm really glad you could stop by. In this video, we'll be looking at my current favorite module, Pamela's new workout. I'm going to call this a shallow dive tutorial because we're not going to do every single minute thing that this module can do. There are plenty of deep dive tutorials out there, and there are a few just quick little demos. I wanted to do something in between, maybe for people a bit like me who are somewhat new to modular and are still trying to find their way around things. One of the worst things you could do with this module is to overthink it. It does go very deep, but it's so simple to use, and I'll put some timestamps up in a moment so you can just jump to a particular part of the video if that's what you're here for. But otherwise, we'll run through the very basic features of this. I'll show you how it doesn't involve a lot of menu diving at all. Like, please don't think that it does. Yeah, hopefully we'll try to just demystify the whole thing and maybe just quash any fears that you might have that could be holding you back from getting this like seriously awesome module. So yeah, timestamps here. See you in a moment. Okay, so here we have my pretty simple and small Eurorack setup at the moment. It's clearly a work in progress. A lot of big empty spaces here, which I know isn't great. I did make a video where I started putting this together. It's changed a lot since then. If you haven't looked at it, feel free to go and have a look. I'm going to make a follow-up to that video pretty soon, actually, because yeah, a lot has changed since then. But anyway, here we have Pamela's new workout. Yeah, again, I said in the intro, it looks like it could be complicated. It doesn't need to be. Basically, two controls here. This program is an encoder. It turns freely. It's also a push button. This is a start-stop. That's how simple it is. Because it's a shallow dive video, we're not going to focus much on these inputs, maybe not even at all. That's probably going to be part of the second video. We're going to focus on these outputs because that's really the most use you're going to be getting out of this, especially if you're just starting out. But yeah, definitely inputs will be looked at in another future video. Everything will be focused on these outputs. So, what is Pamela's new workout? The maker describes it as a clocked modulation source, which is accurate. And there are a lot of demo videos and performance videos that do use this as a basic modulation source, but it does so much more than that. I think just using it for modulating effects is almost doing it a disservice. So let's look at some sound sources. We'll start with, it's a clone of Plaits. So we'll start with this just because this is a full voice module, meaning it has pitch, it has a trigger, which is good for plucks and percussive sounds. There is an input for the level control, and you can CV control almost every parameter on here. All right, so let's get some sound going. I'm going into channel 1. We'll just turn that up a bit, and we are currently on inharmonic strings. And you can just hear it there being generally inharmonic, which is kind of what we want because we're going to just start with a simple pulse. Now you can see on the screen here 120 BPM. We're just going to leave it there. That's just the standard that comes up when you first plug this thing in. 120 it is, just for demo purposes. So, before I plug in, I'm going to press the start-stop button. When I press start, you'll see these lights flashing. That just means that's the tempo that this is set to. Again, nothing complicated. Flashing lights. So, let's plug into output 1. And because this is a plucked a plucked sound on this module. We'll plug into trigger. Let's press start stop again. See? Perfect plucks in time. So already you can kind of get an idea of what's going on. Now, very, very little menu diving. We're currently showing the BPM, which is global for all channels, but that can be changed. That's something we will address very soon. So, if we turn this encoder once, you can see the screen has changed. It's showing output 1. We are plugged into output 1. Modifier, which is the indicator of... Okay, this is one of those things that I need to describe to somebody who might not get it. Okay. If I press once, this has entered the modifier value here. So I've now divided that by 2. It now clicks at half the rate of the others here. So by rights, if I went the other way, multiplied by 2, it's now pulsing or clicking at twice the rate of the others. Very simple. For this, we'll keep it on 1. Okay, so we have ding, 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 ding. Okay, great. That's not the most exciting thing on the planet. What if we unplug the trigger here? And apologies if it gets a bit wacky with the sound, but what if we plug it into volt per octave? You can hear that. It's scrolling very quickly through the entire range of notes. So, we want to correct that. So, lack of menu diving. We are still in output 1. Instead of just pressing once, we're going to press and hold. Suddenly we can see we have a new menu. And this is as deep as the menu diving goes on this. To scroll through this secondary menu, all we need to do is just turn the encoder. We will look at all of these settings, or most of them. So, let's sort out this wave. This pulse wave is not very pleasing to the ear, so because we want to address the wave parameter, we'll press it once. It is now highlighted. We turn the encoder. We can go through different wave shapes. Triangle, sine. We have an envelope. Random is an interesting one. As you can hear, it's doing pulse hits, but well, randomly. So we're starting to get into a little bit of a tune. Well, I don't want to say a tune, but we can get to that. So let's say we want to stay on random. Let's turn the encoder. Suddenly we have a level. This is attenuation of the signal that's coming through. So think of it like if it's at 100%. Think of it as we can select. Again, you can see the parameters being selected. And if we start turning that, it starts going down. It's almost like we're turning down the volume of the modulation. And you can hear the range of notes is starting to tone down a little bit. And as we get lower and lower and lower, we're going to get down to level 1, where it's just going to hold it onto that rather inharmonic, dragging string. Let's put it up. Let's go to 20. We click that, we've now selected. So to go back, run a random wave. We're at 20% attenuation, I guess it's called. So, it still sounds not great. You know, it's all over the place. There's nothing musical about this. Again, we're not going to look at every single parameter here. We're just going to look at the ones that will get you started. So we're not worried about offset right now or width. We will come to phase. shortly. Delay, delay. Euclidean rhythms. A lot is said about these things. Let's turn this off. A lot is said about Euclidean rhythms. I think I'm going to address that in the next video because, again, we just kind of want to get you started. So, we've started with a trigger. Great. We've then used this in output 1 to the volt per octave input on Plaits. Well, micro Plaits. And again, nothing's sounding terribly musical. The beautiful thing is, because this is all tied to that same tempo, that 120 that we looked at initially, any of these outputs that we plug from will all be affecting all the other parameters within Plaits at the same time. For instance, let's take output 2 and let's put it into that initial trigger that we had. Now remember, output 1 is plugged into the volt per octave, and that's random, so that's going to be skipping different notes. Output 2 is at the trigger, so it's going to be just ting, ting, tinging. So when I hit start, hopefully we should just hear a more gentle sort of ting, ting, ting plucked string sound rather than just this sort of angry drawn string sound. Let's see. And there we have it. Much, much nicer. So here we have, we're just using 2 outputs from Pam's going into the volt per octave and the trigger input on micro Plaits. And it's just playing a random little tune. Okay, so we've just stopped that for a moment. Again, it's sounding a lot nicer now that we're actually triggering notes rather than just letting the inharmonic strings just rattle and shake and draw their way through life. But it's still not sounding terribly musical. That's because we are just using basically no particular scale. Now, quantize is an option that was added to the latest firmware, I believe. I think it was firmware 206. But this allows us to tie in these random modes to a different scale. So let's start again. So we press the encoder button again. We can see that this is now selected, so we can affect this parameter. So if we turn, you can see some different letters are popping up now. For instance, this is major scale. Far more musical. We have a minor scale. Harmonic minor. Pentatonic major. And pentatonic minor. And there are a lot more. We have, probably about 8 more different quantize scale options. Let's just leave it on this. That sounds good to me. So we want to select this. So we're just going to press the encoder button again. Now, at this point, we're going to go back to loop. You'll see beat 0, 0. That just means this is going to keep playing random notes based on the parameters set in the level control and the quantize scale mode control. Let's say we want something to be just a little bit more repetitive, something, again, a bit more musical. If we press the encoder button, we can now affect the loop parameter. When we turn this, you'll see these numbers change. And this will start looping the amount of steps that it shows in under beat here. So it's on 1, so it's just looping that 1 note. 2, of course, it's looping 2 notes. Let's go up a little bit. Now it's looping 4 notes. And suddenly, this simple module is controlling micro Plaits really quite beautifully, and it's so simply done. And the beautiful thing is, we're only using 2 of these outputs here. We still have so many more. Okay, and again, 2 simple outputs, making something really quite musical with very little menu diving. Let's look at a more traditional sound source. An analog style oscillator, an analog oscillator, the Dreadbox Hysteria. Very simple and, yeah, far more traditional sounding and in operation. So, we still have the parameters set up for 1 and 2 in here, but we want to go back and reset. So, we can go back to the initial screen by holding down the encoder. You can see this has taken us back to the output screen. Remember, this one goes through the 8 different outputs and the BPM. If we hold down the encoder at this point, we get some different options. These are more global options. Option to reset. Yes, okay. Now, if we hold down this button again, it takes us back to our initial, I guess, home screen. And you can see everything is now flashing in unison at 120 BPM. So, let's start again, like I say, with a more traditional analog oscillator. Output 1. And again, this might get a bit funky on your headphones because it will be sweeping, well, not sweeping, it will be pulsing through a very wide range of notes. So I'll start it and then I'll fade in a little bit so it's not so abrupt. So we're not hearing it so much, but what if we change the wave? So remember, we turn so we can go to output 1, hold down to enter the secondary menu. Wave is currently a pulse or a gate. Push to select. Triangle. Sine wave. And there's that random that we had from the previous. But let's just go back to a sine wave. Press to select it. And remember, we turn it once, we can go to our level control, the level at which the modulations are affecting the sound. Press once. And you can already hear there's a far less range. Let's go with 25, for absolutely no particular reason. Now, again, not terribly musical, it's just like an LFO, it's just affecting this parameter or this input that it's plugged into. But what if we introduce a VCA? So let's plug in to input 2. Now we want to get back to channel or output 2 here, so remember, we hold down the button, takes us to our home screen, 1 turn, hold down. Maybe we want to change that to a sine wave as well, just so it's kind of more in time or in sync. So 1 press. And again, it's nothing terribly musical, but we're getting somewhere with it. Now, yes, this is affecting the gate, but it should be pointed out here that you can really extend the time that will be held open, but it does not sustain. This is not a replacement for a traditional ADSR envelope. This is literally just like an LFO. But at least we now have a smooth rise and fall. So, let's just start playing around with this. Let's see what we can get. So let's go back to the initial home screen. Let's lower the speed here. We have now divided output 1 by 8, so it's going a lot slower, but the gate is still being triggered at that initial 120 speed. So let's go to output 2, press once. Now suddenly we are floating. We are moving more smoothly through that range of notes. Note that these buttons, these outputs, are still flashing at that initial speed, and that's the beautiful part of this module. You can really affect so much with it and change just about everything, but it's always going to be locked into that initial tempo, so things shouldn't get out of line with one another. Why don't we go back to output 1, and we'll change the output. Let's go back to that random. Again, not terribly musical, so let's get this quantized to a certain scale. So remember, we turn till we get to quantization, click. And then we turn until we get something that we like. That's currently just on a very standard minor. Now again, we're still only using 2 outputs here, so why don't we introduce a second oscillator and use a couple more of these outputs. Okay, so we have it all plugged in. Channel 3 is going to the volt per octave input on the second oscillator. Channel 4 is going to the CV input on the VCA here. Now, I have set up 3 and 4 as a divisor of 8, so it will be moving in time with 1 and 2. I haven't changed any other parameters yet. I'm going to do that after I press start. I'm not going to talk through it again though, like we've gone through it a couple of times. I'm just going to do it so you can just kind of see how simple it really is. I'll probably put a couple of notes up on the side of the screen just to try to guide you through it. Again, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself or anyone. But yeah, I'm going to press start stop. It's not going to sound terribly musical because yeah, I haven't changed any other parameters besides the divisor here. So let's go. So yeah, again, It's not a sequencer, this module, that's not the point of it, but it just shows that you can get some different rhythms going. And yeah, there are a few bum notes there, but yeah, it's a random generator at that point. So we still have 4 outputs here. What if we decide to try and affect, well, a sound effect? We have everything running through a filter here. In this case, it's the 2144 4-pole low-pass gate from Electrosmith. So let's plug into output 5. Let's plug into the frequency of the filter. So I'm going to press start, stop. Yeah, that doesn't sound musical at all. So let's start affecting output 5. And again, a pretty random and not overly musical, random just series of notes. And yeah, here we have it just stripped back down to its most basic thing, a 1 output going into my volt per octave input, and output into a VCA. And just even as we saw in the beginning of the video, that 1 output can just do so much. I love that you can affect all these parameters just through that 1 output. I have a tendency to just really throw everything, like I just crank everything up to full and then wonder why, you know, oh, what's going on? Like, this has kind of taught me a little bit of finesse, because if you have everything cranked on here and everything plugged in, it's just and yeah, having all that control. And again, I said it earlier in the video, I'm not really a menu diving kind of guy, but as you've seen, there's just not really any menu diving. It's just a single layer of options. And again, just 1 output that can just do so much. It's, yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling. Yeah, let's plug in a trigger again in harmonic strings. See, we're still at all the same settings with a sine wave there. So it's probably not going to come out so great. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our home screen, click once, hold down, go to our wave, type. And of course, turn level back up to 100% because micro Plaits, having a trigger that's expecting a certain amount of noise. Great. So again, just like I say, a bit of a shallow dive. If you need the sort of in detail version, DivKid of course has done like a really great video on that. Again, I just wanted to do something a bit more simple and just show me just kind of using it as I might, and again, just to hopefully take away some of the fear that you might have had, or at least answer some questions about this module. I guess a kind of review, like I've clearly been gushing about it and calling it my new favorite module. So yeah, clearly I like it. Any cons? No, because it does everything that it advertises and more. It's beautifully made. The only con I would say is in the updating the firmware process. It was not simple. They give really good directions and a really helpful video, but it involved like downloading a random program, and you need to have a a mini USB cable, not even a micro, so a really old mini USB cable that can transfer data, not just a charging one. I luckily had one just lying around from an old external CD drive, so that's something to bear in mind. And there was like a misprint in their instruction manual, but they addressed that in the video, so it wasn't a simple process to update, but it worked, so yeah, minor negative. The only thing I could say is I would love it if there was some sort of basic sequencer in there, but I'm not going to complain about that in any way. There was a Pamela's workout before this Pamela's new workout, so maybe there'll be a third one at some point. Yeah, not sure. But that is just a bit of a, shallow dive tutorial, bit of a review, and just a quick look at, Pamela's new workout. There will be a second video I will do very soon, where we'll just start looking at things like the top inputs, how it can interact by accepting a clock signal from an external device or sending a clock signal to an external device. And we will probably get a little bit into like the Euclidean rhythms and just a few of the other parameters that we just kind of glossed over there. Again, I just wanted to get you going with this module. We'll also in the next video look at creating drum patterns. Again, very simple but extremely effective. But that will be it for this video. I'm glad you could stop by. I really hope you got something out of it. If you found this video helpful, please give a thumbs up. If you've never visited my channel before, stick around, look at some of my videos. I've got plenty of music, a lot of sort of cheaper gear reviews. I'm just starting to get into Eurorack stuff. If you're still enjoying it, please consider a subscription. It's really helpful, it's really appreciated. I'll put up some links to other videos, and again, if you found it helpful, check back for part 2. Otherwise, I'm really glad you could stop by. Hope to see you again. Cheers. Well, questions or comments down below, please. I'm really responsive to comments here on my YouTube page. I'll do my best to answer them. And I just love talking about this stuff too. So go ahead down below. Again, thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and please consider a subscription.